Yo, what's up, everybody? D4s here, 428 Battle of Vig. Today we're going to discuss really building an account. Uh, what decisions you need to make. I suppose for players that have played a long time too. I mean, direction and really how can you play the game effectively and enjoy it the most. I mean, a lot of people just want to grow and put a bubble on and kill monsters, and that's great. But for the people that want a PvP, there's really and that aren't coining at a high level, there's a couple decisions you have to make. You either need to be able to be a ghost and keep and play defense that way by not having anything in your castle when people attack you, or you need to be able to defend. And I think the easiest way to do that is really through building kind of a trap account. And so we're just going to kind of go over what's important in regards to building a successful account from scratch, or really an account that can defend or ghost. So I was a ghoster, I probably up until almost 1 billion, at least for the first year. And my main focus was on keeping the amount of troops that I had in my castle as light as possible. It makes it difficult to rally and join rallies, but early on in the game there's not a lot of rallies anyways, and so really you're getting the majority of your points through attacking people who can't defend, who aren't listening to this video. So at that point it was like trying to make as strong a attack march as possible. I focused on ranged early because a lot of people build cav to run monsters, so it becomes an effective troop type early on, and even long term, you're going to need range to join rallies and some other things. Then I kind of branched out into the other troop types, ground and cav, and then really siege last. Siege became so it's almost the biggest troop type now for us, but really just building one really good range march. So I think what you have to live by is buffs over troops, right? So do not build troops until you level your rally spot here and you get your march size up. Really manage how many troops you have in your building so you can ghost effectively in 2 or 3 marches, 1 or 2 marches. The least amount of marches that you have to ghost, the more efficient you become and the harder it is to hit you. But it's buffs, right? Buffs and leveling your castle. That should be your primary goal before building out a ton of troops. And then when you get to higher level, you can start to build out more, grow that way, and then maybe work, on your defenses. The difficult part is when you do get to that point, it's going to be really difficult for a little bit, because you're the more troops you build, you're going to become liable. You really haven't built defenses yet. But that's kind of the way I did it, and then kind of ballooned and started working on defense. So if you're building early on, level, do as much tech as you can, try and find buffs everywhere you can find them, and don't really build out your troops. If we're building a trap keep here, what's important, I think you can do it with any troop type. The most common is like a T1 cav or a T1 ground. I've seen a lot of successfully done cav and ground traps, or defenses rather. And but we've actually started to experiment. One of my best friends on the server has hopped in and out of accounts, and he hopped in and alt and built out an alt to be a range trap, and has been really pretty successful. It was just surprising, but we've nerded a couple things and kind of built it out. And I mean, we've faced GOT, HOT, and RSP, those 3 alliances and servers the last 9 SVS we've had, and he was the number 1 player as a 350 million account with a range trap, which is pretty unconventional. So you can do it with any troop type. There's a couple keys I think that are important. The first would be having enough troops, right? 50 million T1 is light, but could be effective depending on who you're facing and whatnot. But I would really recommend probably 100 million T1, and then 10% in the T2 layer as sort of protection. So 10 million T2, 100 million T1. I think that's a really good starting point. If you're building out a defense, you could pick your troop type. Do you want it to be archer? Do you want it to be, cav? Do you want it to be ground? I think, cav or ground is probably proven to be the most successful. I mean, we're still nerding out some stuff with the other troop types, but again, whatever you do commit to, just build out, as many T1 as you can, back it up with a little T2 and maybe some T3 or T4 layers, but you're going to need layers of every troop type in your building. But realize that the more troops you have, the more higher level troops you have, you're not going to be buffing them because of the way that we're going to buff your troops. So they're liable to be killed, and you won't lose power, and you'll lose power exchanges. Sorry. So you got to be really careful about what you have, and high level cav and ground, you should probably ghost out. If you have range and siege, it's going to help your T1 cav or ground, but it does make you susceptible for siege solos. So depending again on what server you're on, there might not be any danger for that taking place. On this server there is, but it's I would just initially stay light, focus one main troop type. And the most important thing is your refines, right? So when you build out your gear, you need to make sure that you refine flat. And we're going to go over why that's the case. I have mixed refines. I have a lot of higher end troops. And based on how I get attacked and some other things, I've switched some of this around and done some different things. I won't go into tremendous detail. But if you notice right here, just on my leg armor, this piece, you notice that I have one flat refine. So when I say flat, it's a plus number refine. It is not the percentage-based refines, okay? So when we talk about flat, we're shooting for those numbers, and here's why. So if we go into, we're gonna deal with cav right now, but if we go into cav and we look at it, and we look at T15 cav, and we look at these stats, right? So attack, 30,000, HP, 64,000, defense, 19,000. And you'll see their speed and range component, 650. So let's say, for instance, we take that 1,800 HP stat and we add it to that, right? So that's taking that HP from 64,000, it's taking it up to almost 66,000. If I had a percent refine there of, say, 30%, and we extrapolate that out, that's a little over, at 64,000 HP, that's a little over 9,000. So percentage is helping my T15 way, way more than flat number refines. If everyone understands that. And if we transition over to T1, so I'm going to go all the way back down here to T1. And we look at this, you'll see obviously these numbers are much smaller, but look, speed is the same, 600, range is the same, 50. And then we look at, attack and HP. So let's take that flat HP 1800 refine and we put it on here and look at the improvement it makes there. So it's taken it up to 4400. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a calculator, I can do some math in my head, but what's that, 70, 80%? You can't refine for that high a level. So I think the breakdown's T12, T11, T12, somewhere in that range where, really percentage-based stats are skewing to help, higher end troops way more, and flat stats help lower end troops way more. So if you're building a trap and you're building a ton of T1 and T2, then you are going to want all flat statistics, refines, okay? So that is, I think, the singular biggest thing that you can do, because what you're going to do is you're going to take these level 1 cav, and you're going to make them as strong as level T10, T11 cav. And you've got this huge layer, and based on like battle dynamics, and we'll go a little deeper into battle dynamics. We're going to do a March setup video, later this week. But, when an opponent attacks, they're starting at top tier and they're working their way down, right? So they should have layers. You have layers. Layers are very important. I won't get into that in this video, but the reality is that, if someone sees all that cav and they're attacking you with a range march, their range is focusing on your T, 15 cav, then 14, 13, 12, all the way down to 1. So because these troops, cav, are so fast, you see that speed component 600, they are going to get to your, and they're the same speed component at 15, they're going to get to the opponent at the same time as the rest of the cav layers do. The problem is that most of the upper tier cav layers have already been attacked and will probably die. But this big wave of T1 won't. They'll get to the opponent and they'll start killing them because they have high attack stats. And range really doesn't have very high statistics in general. They kill because they get shots off without being attacked, right? So they need to kill their opponents quickly to be successful. If you look at ground based on the way, battle dynamics work, ground is much slower, but it starts much closer to the opponent. So again, you get the same kind of, you see their speed's 350, but they're starting closer to the opponent. So ground and cav are really, they call them melee troops. They're starting much closer to the opponent. They're going to get into battle very quickly, whereas range troops and siege troops sit back a little bit. So, again, if you're building a T1, defense, you're going to need a healthy level of troops, and you're going to need to refine your gear for flat refines. Okay, so for the weapon and the ring, you're going to want flat cav attack. If you're building T1 cav, if you're building T1 ground, you want flat ground attack. For your helmet and your leg armor, you want flat HP refines for the specific troop that you have. If you have for your boots and for your regular armor, you want flat defense refines because that's going to benefit you. And as you grow, you can change some of those refines to benefit. Maybe you want the attack coming from your siege or range. But again, initially, you're building out a big wave of small troops. Buff those troops. I think it's incredibly important to get to K33. At K33, you're going to see Forge. You'll start to be able to build ACA gear. Why is that important? We're going to go to it. You'll see here, this ACA gear has debuffs. Debuffs is the second most important thing you need to defend as a trap keep. You'll also see here with a 6-piece set buff, you get that minus 15%. I think when it comes to building out your defense general, listen, if you spent a little bit, you have some civ gear, you have some stuff that specifically buffs, that troop type, even if it is percentage, it's gonna help. Really work on getting if you have cav, T1 cav, really work on getting cav stats as high as possible. So all your gear choices should be geared towards, cavalry. Your defense general, you should probably have Boudica, who's very cav-oriented defense general, or someone that buffs cav. If you've got ground, maybe it's Leonidas or Trajan. You should really be focused there. So again, it's important to pick the right gear. I think ACA gear, as a K33, you run a ton of Vikings, get a ton of materials, build a ton of gear, start gearing out your sub generals, right? Like, if you're early on in the game and early on in a server, you need to get as many, sub slots as possible. So your rank needs to be as high as possible. Why is that important? Well, if you look at it, like I have 9 sub slots. I can't afford the 10th. But you look at this, I got 9 guys that have that 6 out of 6 enemy troop attack 15%. So you're getting 135% attack debuff across every troop type there. And then you start to look at all of these. You really probably, if you're a mounted trap keep, you really want to focus on courageous AC rings because you get that minus 40% enemy range troop attack. That's huge. So it's all about trying to, buff your troops accordingly. The flat stats help a lot because they don't get debuffed the way the applications work. They won't get debuffed. They get applied after. Percentage refines do get debuffed. So again, that's another advantage. So when you're refining your gear, we talked about it here, right? You look at this, mounted troop HP plus 1966, right? So that's not going to get debuffed. That's going to get applied after. That's hugely important for small troops. And then get your debuffs up as high as possible. Culture, Russia culture, because that main sub-city will help with defending attack percentage. It'll help bring that up. And again, if you're gathering subs, gather as many rushes as you can because that'll help you in defense. We went over this before. Japan's are going to help in attack. Russians are going to help in defense. I don't suggest taking rallies as a trap keep. It just doesn't seem to work very well. but you're going to be really successful defending solos. You can, not be afraid to have your bubble off and go play around over there. And especially if you keep your power lever low, people don't scout you. They're going to hit you because they think they can zero you. We've had many SVS where I've zeroed a 2 bill opponent in Battlefield, because they're not built properly. But, I got an 800 million power player that I can't even go positive on because I have to attack them in a different fashion. And ultimately we end up having to rally them, and that's giving them 10, 15 seconds or whatever that is to move, and they can have a lot of fun playing the game. So I don't think it's that difficult. I don't think you have to invest all that much. Build out your T1 layers, your T2 layers. Keep the rest of the layers small. Maybe it's 10K. Maybe it's a little higher. You can toy around with that. I don't think you need all that many. And then make sure that you get the right gear on your general and you refine them properly. Refining is expensive, but is the singular most important thing you can do to create a successful T1 trap. And then after that, try and get your debuffs as high as possible. Have fun. That's about it. So again, we're going to do a March setup video here later this week. If anyone wants to see anything else, please just holler, let me know. Appreciate all the support. Have a great day. Later.